Welcome to the Female by Design podcast, an honest space for female flourishing. I'm Francie Winslow. Together, we'll explore sexuality and spirituality by God's design, healing our relationship with pleasure, our bodies, and our identity as beloved image bearers. So let's take a deep breath and step into God's invitation to live fully alive as women. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everybody. It's Francie. Welcome to my new podcast launch. You are joining me today on the first episode of the Female by Design podcast. If you have been with me anytime, you know that this podcast is known previously as Heaven in Your Home. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of where I've been for the last several years. I started recording Heaven in Your Home in 2019 and kind of where that has brought us and how and why we are transitioning into a new season as a podcast, as a space for us to gather and connect and grow. So I hope that you are ready to join me for a little conversation. I'm praying that this feels like pulling up a chair into a really warm living room space with a sense of openness to say, what's happened? What's been happening? Because stuff has been happening in me, and it's maybe not like life-changing, but it's been a slow growing space of hungering for God's heart as it relates to femininity and sexuality, my embodied experience, and watching God do amazing things in the lives of women that he's brought my way. And so I'm excited to lean in and share with you some of that story and share with you some of the vision of where this podcast is heading in the near future. So let's just take a second, because this has become one of my favorite ways to incorporate the body into the podcast, where I just invite you to put your hand on your chest, one hand on your chest, one hand on your stomach, and just like, wow, feel the fact that you have a body. Thank you, God, for these bodies. Take a deep breath in and feel the inhale, fill your chest and stomach space, your diaphragm, and hold it, and a long exhale out. Let's do one more together. Long exhale out. When I'm not here in my closet recording this podcast, I like to do several of those. So I just invite you to continue if that felt good to you, if it feels like you're beginning to unwind a little bit. That is my heart's desire, is to live myself connected to God, my creator, and how he has made my body to operate in a way that lives aware of him and lives aware of what he's doing around me and feels that sense of communion with him in an embodied way. That I'm not just a brain floating around with theological thoughts or a heart floating around with emotions and feelings, but that I also carry those gifts within this good, beautiful, strong, capable female body. And that there's a lot to unpack around that topic. And the more I get into it, the more pumped I am and excited I am to launch this new space. So let's invite God into it and then jump into the conversation. God, we've already invited you in with our stillness, with our breath, saying thank you, God, Spirit of God, breath of God, for filling us. Thank you for being the God of our families, of the individuals listening, of the generations that have come and that will come. You are our creator God, King of the universe, Lord of lords, and our friend. Thank you that you are closer than a brother and that you are actually in us, filling us, sustaining us. Lord, thank you for leading us into new spaces, for establishing our steps, and for the ways you reveal your heart to us along this journey. We open up ourselves to you to receive more from you today. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, welcome, friends. All right, I'm so excited. I'm going to be sharing today the vision behind Female by Design. This is a space where God has been inviting me to re-examine what I have done, what I've been talking about, what I've been offering, and more than that, how I've been offering it. So I'm going to take you way back to the story of Heaven in Your Home podcast, give you a little bit of bearings so that if you're new, you know a little bit about where I've come from. And if you have been following along for a while, you can kind of hear the story that maybe you have missed. But for way back, early in my years of marriage, I got married at the ripe age of 20, and I had been really fervently loving God and really wanting to follow him. And as I was doing that as a young woman, I sought to give him my sexuality as best as I knew how. And the best I knew how at that point was don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. There were not a lot of conversations about the meaning of my body, the beauty of being female, the power of my beauty. None of that. It was more of like the dangerousness of your beauty. Hide it, shove it down, put it away, because modest is hottest, right? That trope, which is fine if you like rhymes, but it's really such a miss from us understanding the true gift of beauty and what modesty really is. We're going to get to that in a few episodes from now. But I just had a pretty restrictive, limiting, shame-based view of my beauty, of my body, of my femininity. And I didn't know anything different. It wasn't that I was worried about that at that point. I was just doing my best to not distract my brothers, not make a brother stumble, make sure my outfit at church was really modest so that no one stumbled when I was worshiping. Those kinds of things went through my head as it relates to my femininity. And then just don't do stuff with your body with a boy. That was the main idea. So that was my background. Really trying to love God, got married at 20 and did not know how to transition from don't do it to you can do it. And not only should you do it, you need to do it to make your husband happy, to keep him from straying, to keep him from looking at porn. You have to be a sexually satisfying wife. And that was like the biggest head fake ever. I could not wrap my head around being shame-free in my sexuality, when apparently the only thing I knew how to do was walk in shame with my sexuality. There was so much silence, not only like locally, but just globally as it appeared to me at that point on the topic of feminine flourishing and what the beauty and the power of feminine sexuality is, and what it feels like to be a sexually alive and abundantly flourishing woman. There was just no conversations about that. No conversations about the theology of my body, the theology of sexuality, how to see and bridge that gap from don't do it to you get to do it. And not only do you get to do it, but it can be beautiful. It can be full. It can be healing. It can be restorative. It can be a space of heaven coming to earth, quite frankly. So as Wyatt and I stumbled through our first year of marriage, we realized that there is unique power in the gift of sex, of two becoming one, as God invites us to do so with our sexuality, that it's about a one flesh union. And it's not powerful just because it's a sexual release. It's not powerful just because it's something that a man needs at all. Like, I don't actually buy into all of those old ways of thinking. It's powerful because of the way God designed our bodies to have a connection with our sexuality and to share it with another fully vulnerable, fully open, with trust over a long time. I'm a huge fan of marriage. I'm a huge fan of monogamy. I am a fan of this part of God's design because I believe it's the space where our hearts can be open and be healed and be nourished in a covenant of love for a long period of time. So there's no rush to get it all right your first year of marriage. You have a lifetime to learn. But if we're going to learn, let's have conversations about how we can learn, how we can grow, how we can walk in freedom. And so that was our journey for the first really 15 years of our marriage, was trying to grow in freedom, trying to figure out this sex stuff, trying to understand that there is power in it. There is this sense of goodness. And that's a bit where the Heaven in Your Home idea came from, is we realized that we were leaning in when things were hard. We were leaning in through our wounding, and we were choosing connection sexually. Many times we didn't feel like it, and many times when we did, but we were prioritizing our sexuality. And the more we prioritized it, the more we realized that the culture of our home was beginning to feel like a sense of tangible goodness and a bit of heaven. And we were shocked and surprised about the power of married sexuality, the power of married sex. And as we became more surprised, the more we leaned in, the more we did it, the more powerful we realized it really is. And that there is a grace on a one flesh union when there is vulnerability of heart and sharing of life and prioritizing one another's needs before our own. There's this mutual pleasing and honoring of each other. And during that time, we were having a lot of inner healing needs. We were having the conflict of newlyweds trying to figure out how to love each other. But we were also as we were praying and finding counseling, we were also prioritizing our sex life. And that first year of marriage, we had sex almost every day of that first year. And it wasn't because we needed to prove anything. It was this space of discovery of this is actually better than anyone told us. This is better than we thought. This is powerful. This is a gift. It took me probably 20 years. We've just celebrated our 20th anniversary. It probably took me 15 years to actually receive more and more of the power of my own femininity in that equation. I think I still was recovering from his needs. It's his need. You got to meet his need. But even in my misunderstandings, even in the place that I was underdeveloped and immature, I could still tell there is something powerful about this. So thus begins my healing journey. And I have been on a healing journey as it relates to my body, my sexuality, my femininity, my shame journey, getting free of shame, getting permission for pleasure, embracing the design of pleasure for my female body, understanding my female anatomy, understanding the goodness and the beauty even of my menstrual cycle, understanding how to articulate desire and own desire, feel my body, how to go from numb and dumb, which is what I used to be, where I was numb because I had dissociated from my body out of fear and shame, to really beginning to feel my body again. And then to begin to be able to understand and be educated and celebrate the design of my body and share that with my husband. That's been my journey, I would say, starting about 5 or 6 years ago. I really got unlocked. And there was a few things that helped unlock me. One was my husband realizing in part how much Christian culture had played a role. I think at that point, we still hadn't pulled the pieces apart of how Christian culture, our upbringing, really did affect my view of my body and my femininity. And it was about 5 or 6 years ago that he started seeing, oh, whoa, the way we've been raised, although it was well-intentioned on every front and everybody's doing the best they can, we don't blame anybody, we had some pieces of the puzzle majorly missing, primarily the value of woman, the value of women's body, of women's experience, of women's voice, of women's pleasure. Because culturally, not only in the church, but culturally, from the way Western civilization has formed over the last, hundreds of years, back to thousands of years, the way that the world has formed with more masculine-centric voices, the way the medical system has formed with more masculine-centric voices and perspective, women's voices and women's perspective and women's stories have not been the leading perspective. And as a result, we don't have that much value for women's perspective, voice, especially on the topic of sexuality, pleasure, our bodies, especially in a religious setting. So that really springboarded me into more healing as we started peeling back the layers of shame that I've carried that were not just mine, not just put on me by what is recent events like the last 30 years of my life, but going back generations from the lack of medical knowledge of women's body, the lack of honor of women's bodies in the church, in our culture, the damage that sexual revolution did to skew our view of sexuality, but then the fear that the church responded with in all of that, and how that affected how we approach sexuality with such fear and with such restriction rather than education and celebrating God's good design. As we unpack those layers, I started seeing, wow, I have a lot to learn about my pleasure. And so I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, I started owning and befriending my body in a new way. And God has been healing me. So all that to say, when I started the Heaven in Your Home podcast back in 2019, it was around that time that my gears were starting to change, but I wasn't confident enough to say much of this out loud. It was a bit like, I've got to talk about sexuality. I've got to talk about sex, and I don't really know how to do it. And Heaven in Your Home was my prayer that God's kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven. starting in my home, starting in the most intimate places of my home, and that his rule and reign and healing would work its way out with the ripple effect of sex and intimacy, that as that is being tended to, there is a ripple effect of impact when our marriage is cared for, when our sexuality is cared for, our children are blessed, our churches are blessed, our workplace is blessed, our careers, our communities, and our culture. I do believe in that ripple effect of sex. And so primarily for me, even before my marriage being tended to, guess what needed to be tended to? My female heart, mind, and body. So heaven in your home was a bit of a blanket statement to say, yeah, we want God's presence in our home, in our bedrooms, in our everything about our home, for it to be a place of God's kingdom coming. But it was a bit at that point underdeveloped because I wasn't confident enough to say the things that I'm saying now, because I hadn't been as free as God has set me free now. And so this has been a freedom journey for me, even as I've been leading this podcast, even as I've been putting these things out there. I still believe everything I said, but I've gotten so much more free in the last 5 or 6 years since I started this podcast. And I've seen such a need in myself and in the women that have gathered, whether it's in the circle that I'm leading online, the group mentorship, or it's women I meet just out and about, or it's women who email me, that there is a need for honest, real conversations about feminine sexuality and true spirituality. And by that, I don't mean like woo-woo out there. I mean like Jesus-centered. God is redeeming us in every space, in every way, healing us from the lies of the enemy, healing us from shame, healing us from our wounded places, from the where we've wounded others, where we've been wounded, renewing our understanding of our nervous system, and inhabiting these good bodies so that we can say yes to the things God's called us, so we can say yes to discipling the next generation with a sense of joy and freedom around the topic of sexuality, and not silence and shame. So that is where the vision for Female by Design comes from, is that we have a designer. We were made on purpose. We love Psalm 139. I love Psalm 139, that marvelous are your works, O God, and that my soul knows well. So my female design, my clitoral structure, my pelvic floor anatomy, my capacity for pleasure and multiple orgasms, my nervous system and how it craves safety, it needs safety in order to feel pleasure, all the ways God designed us sexually, and also trauma-informed care, how we operate in real life when hard things come, seasons of suffering, what it looks like for female flourishing in all of those areas. Also, what it looks like to have community with other females, what it looks like for us to tell our stories, for us to glean wisdom from older women who have insights on where we've missed it as the church, where we have things to learn, where we can find healing from biblical truth about the power of God's design of female, where we are not diminished. We are not experiencing the sense of women be silent, because that is not happening anymore. Not on this podcast, not in this space. It is not about women losing their voice. It's about women regaining the song that God put in them to sing in every sphere of their lives, because God designed male and female in his image. In his image, he designed them. So what does it mean for women to be fully alive, sexually, spiritually, relationally, in an embodied way, in a way that we understand how our bodies are created to work, how we respond to our environment, how we respond to hard things, how we process stress, how we process sexual desire, how we process things like our period, how do we move from shame into joy as it relates to our female design. And those are some of the topics that I am super excited about going into. There is this novel called The Red Tent. It's by Anita Diamant. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right, but she talks about the Red Tent as a place where the Israelite women left community, left their people, and went out to the red tent during menstruation. And I have often had a really negative feeling when I heard those scriptures about how, when a woman is on her period, childbirth and menstruation, she has to leave and go out because she's unclean. And so those thoughts have always made me feel icky as a woman. But the way that I'm reading this novel, it's about Dinah and some biblical characters from the Old Testament. And so it's very interesting to see these women and their relationships in the red tent. but it's a space where these women are actually not going away because they're shamed or isolated or exiled, if you will, because of their bodies. It's a place of storytelling and spiritual enrichment. It's a place of communal and supportive connection. It's a place where there's relational capacity for talking honestly about our bodies, about our sexuality, about things that have to do with being women. It's a place for renewal and rest and connection and teaching. And that is kind of all the things that I hope this podcast can become, is like a red tent, if you will, a space where we can gather as women to actually be honest about our bodies, to be actually honest about what it is to be female, not in the way that we put shoulds on us or we carry around shame with us, but a place where we celebrate the design of God that He called very good. So this space of being female, connected to the Female by Design community, this podcast is not a space where I am going to show up all the time. I do have the gift of teaching, but it's not a place where I want to come with all the answers to give you all the right answers. It's a place where I want to share what I'm exploring, what I'm learning, what I'm growing in, what I'm receiving from others, what I'm experimenting with in my female design, whether it's in sexuality, as it relates to my nervous system, as it relates to learning from other women. I want to be able to have this space where we can share honestly about God's good design of femininity, and that girls and women from all stages can listen in and learn, because I have my ear leaning into older women because I want to know what do I have to look forward to? How do I need to prepare? What is space that I can celebrate, that places that I didn't know were, available to me as a woman, places to lean in so that I can glean and grow and find healing. And I hope that that is what is felt when you listen to this podcast, a place where we can really engage and celebrate the beauty, power, and purpose of female sexuality, of female embodiment. And by that, I just mean living in our bodies, the experience of being women made in the image of God, loving Him, seeking Him, mind, body, and spirit. So this is a exciting step for me. It's a bold step where I am taking a risk to get a little bit more focused, rather than heaven in your home being so broad, saying, hey, we're going to celebrate the design of God as He made women, and we're going to explore and learn together. It's not a place where I have all the answers. It's a place where I am learning and growing with you and setting a broad table, if you will, so that we can gather together and learn more about God's heart for female design. Mind, body, and spirit, a place where we can grow in freedom, where we can grow in joy, and we can grow in celebration for how God made us to live fully alive sexually, spiritually, relationally, all in the context of our femininity. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and I look forward to connecting with you more on the Female by Design podcast. Bless you guys.